Very good evening of Industry and Commerce. We welcome each one of you to this webinar on Reboot Your Business, the panel discussion. In time like this, we need to stay connected and stay positive. This session is being organized under the aegis of Banking and Finance and Corporate Affairs Expert Committee of BCIC. We like to especially thank Mr. Ganesh Swamy, Chair, and Dr. V Omprakash, Co-Chair, Banking, Finance and Corporate Affairs Expert Committee of BCIC, for curating this session for the benefit of our members at this crucial period. The speakers for today's panel discussion are Mr. Amit Chatterjee, who has been an executive coach, growth facilitator to the CEOs, MD, business owners, SME in India and Germany. He has more than 35 years of experience in the industry. The other speaker, Mr. Sudhir Swamy, has over 28 of overall experience in management consulting and growing business. He has been an independent consultant in Promac Consulting Service and specializes in strategic business planning and performance improvement. And the third speaker is Mr. P.S. Rao, runs a business advisory firm, Pinnacle Business Advisory Services. Prior to this, he was working in the IT software industry for over 2 decades. His expertise is developing enterprise scale IT information system and products. Mr. Amogh Giridhar, head engagement at Prequed and also managing advisor relation and communication for the IB division. The youngest on this panel with a career of 15 years of experience working with small and medium-sized business. The fifth speaker is Mr. Randhir Pushpa, is the founder of the chief consultant of ACES Innovation with offices in Bangalore and Singapore. He has over more than 20 years of experience and has worked across multiple organizations. A management practitioner with focus in helping business organizations becoming competitive and thought leader through focused capability building and knowledge management. Mr. Ramkumarr Seshu uh, began his Born to Win in 2003 to focus in helping MD, CEO to implement their plans. This is done by enhancing the personal effectiveness of the employees to become a more efficient. Ram has earlier involved in 2 successful startup and 3 turnaround companies at a very senior position. Ram has spent 20 years in advertising as an ad man. The today's session will be moderated by Dr. V Omprakash, co-chair of the Banking, Finance and Corporate Affairs Expert Committee of BCIC, and an advocate and a founder director of Consortia Consultants. On behalf of the Bangalore Chamber of Industry Commerce, we express our sincere thanks to Mr. Amit Chatterjee, Mr. Sudhir Swamy, Mr. Amogh Giridhar, Mr. P.S. Rao, Dr. Randhir Pushpa, Dr. Ramkumarr for accepting our invitation to address on this important subject. We also like to thank all the participants for joining today's session. We request all of you to kindly mute your mic and webcam option. This is to enhance and keep the bandwidth strong as well as avoid any disturbance in the background. Please post your questions in the chat box only. Also be viewing the chat box for any specific instruction given by the organizer from time to time. The speakers will respond to the question during the session, and in case time do not permit, we shall be sharing the queries to the panelists and shall revert back to you accordingly. Kindly note the organizers will be disconnecting those participants who switch on their mic or webcam despite of our frequent requests. May I now invite Dr. V Omprakash to set the context for today's subject and also moderate the session. Thanking you once again to all of you. Over to you, Dr. Omprakash.
Thank you, Prithvi. Thank you for your wonderful introduction and welcoming all. Before starting, I welcome all of you again to this another episode webinar. And this time it is going to be a very serious subject as to how we need to go about on rebooting our business. As you all know, I don't have to say, we are all the entrepreneurs are passing through a rough tide, and it's a global phenomenon. The only solacing factor is you are not alone. It is everybody who is facing this. So now in this scenario, one has to be very prudent, judicious, and see that how he can survive, move forward, and plan for the years to come. So this is a testing phase, and all the employers, and entrepreneurs have to really face this as a challenge, and it is not a pull down. It is only a rough tide, and we need to sail through positively. In this scenario, I think some of the entrepreneurs may be facing some problem, shut down their shop, may diversify, may somehow keep break up the whole situation and try to go ahead. I'm sure this year 2021 is not going to be like your previous year, and all the projections which you would have made to your investors or bankers is going to take a beat. So let us accept this. So acceptance is very important. And one thing I would, as a lawyer, corporate lawyer, would suggest is, despite all these things, all the entrepreneurs should ensure that the compliances and the statutory dues are met. Otherwise, that's going to be another add-on trouble. Now, for the next 1.5 hours, we have a strong panelist who are going to discuss on various options available, what are the methods, tools to reboot the business, and they are going to talk about various things, how to face the challenge. And what the contest is here is that the entrepreneurs have to be bold, think different, empower themselves, look beyond. They have to think of an inorganic growth and not only the depth. They have to be beyond depth. How do you mobilize? How do you synergize with others and use the digital technology and optimize your workplace? So there are some good things which has emanated from the pandemic things, and what disruptions have been made. We have to positively approach and go forward in making our business a success and plan for 21-22 and survive. So you have to make a lot of compromises with your existing vendors, suppliers, bankers, investors, shareholders, and all stakeholders proactively. Don't wait for situations to rise. Be proactive, talk to them, negotiate, settle them, and enter into various MOUs, reschedule, and review your agreements. See that things are in place, all the force majeure conditions. So all these things will help you in a longer run and tie over. Now I would there's a disturbance. I think you have to mute everybody. Yeah, thank you. So now reboot your business is the need of hour, and I would straight away get into the panel discussion. The session is going to be into two parts. We will have a session going up to 4:55 where the speakers are going to share their thoughts, and the last half hour can be kept open for question answers, so that we pick up the questions which are in the chat box, and if possible, if time permits, people can interact as well. So now I would the first question would be to Mr. Amit. What do you think that a CEO today has to lead his team? How best he can do in this scenario?
Thank you, Dr. Omprakash. Thank you for a pretty loaded question. Well, I hung up my CEO boots a few years back, but I can share how I have been facilitating my CEO clients as an executive coach or a growth facilitator over the last year or two. First of all, I would like to ask all the CEOs in the audience one question. They don't have to answer it publicly or on the chat box. You can answer it to yourselves to your own minds. The question is, do you see your company doing things in 2021, that is from January 2021 onwards, similar to what you were doing in the pre-COVID days? Just answer it in your minds. 3, 2, 1. I guess most of you got the answer as no. So you need to bring in change, period. But before you get into how to bring in change, what to change, etc., it is important to understand who manages the continuity. If you are managing the present, the continuity, you are a manager. You cannot be the leader managing the future. You have too many distractions. A CEO has to develop a few great managers who can manage the present. You see, change and continuity are like two legs. They are the two legs that a CEO or a company stands upon. You can raise the change leg only when you are standing firm on the continuity leg. So, once you have taken care of the continuity, you are free to envision the future. The vision forms in your mind. Let me give you a taste. It is 2023. You are shipping export consignments to Eastern Europe, Brazil, Nigeria. You have 5 hot-selling new products designed by your development center. You have a spanking new plant, wide open offices, full of happy, knowledgeable people, a beautiful campus spread over 10 acres. 100 cars are parked in your campus. You have a lively cafeteria with soft music playing in the background. And not to forget yourself and your family, you have already booked your vacation with your family for 2 weeks in the lovely Andalusian mountains or the backwaters of Kerala. But for all that to come true, you need to identify a few crazy change agents today. Yes, crazy change agents. They have to be crazy about making this vision a reality. You don't need too many. Maybe you need 5 or 10 knowledgeable, passionate individuals who will help build the detailed strategy and go on to execute the same. But don't forget, it is a CEO's job to infect them with this vision. Now, I just give you 2 more points. One is how to infect your change agents. 3 cues. Number 1, make them contribute to the vision. And how do you do that? Please do not try to motivate them with compensation alone. Rather, harness their free will. Seek their help to build a strategy for the vision that you have, that you explain, that you communicate, you articulate. Make it real. Give them a deadline. Ask them to present the strategy in 8 weeks with the first cut review slated for 15th October 2020. Ask your secretary to block your calendar and theirs for the whole day and the boardroom. Make it real. The second and the last point is you need to demonstrate your commitment as a leader. 3 cues again. Socialize 1 hour every week with each of your change agents. If you're working with 5 change agents, you need just 5 hours a week to socialize. Even if you're today keeping yourself safe at your homes, home offices, or going to the office and not socializing too much, you can spend 1 hour over Zoom or go to a meeting or whatever with those change agents every week. Be seen with them. Second one, discuss what they're researching, developing, suggest changes, participate, tweak, but most importantly, approve the strategy by 20th December 2020. Third point, commit resources from January 2021. My co-panelists will be very happy to throw some more light on what and how to commit. So what do you have? By 20th December, you have an approved strategy with know-how, technology, processes, and people needed to create competitive advantage in the market to play in. I summarize, you need to do just 4 things. 1, develop or have a good management team. 2, you need it. I think there is some disturbance coming. I'll try to summarize again. Just 4 things. 1, develop or have a good management team to manage your present or continuity. 2, you need to develop a vision for 2023 with conviction. 3, infect 5 or 10 crazy change agents. And finally, approve the developed strategy by 20th December 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, you are ready to reboot your company starting 1st January 2021. Thank you, Dr. Omprakash.
That was wonderful, Amit, and good insight. I only remember about our famous dialogue from Sholay. It is none other than Gabbar Singh. Jo dar gaya samgo mar gaya. So I don't think we should really get into that panic or that situation, but still one has to really face it with courage, and that applies to every entrepreneur. So we should not even get into that Gabbar Singh dialogue. So we are safe, but yes, we need to really reboot ourselves. This question I would ask to Sudhir. We talk about jumpstart growth. So what could be the strategies and planning around that? Would it change? Is that a requirement now? Sudhir ji?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Omprakash, for that question. A very critical question, and thank you, Prithvi, for the introduction before. Okay, so let me start, by defining reboot. So reboot means to start something again or do something again in a way that is different. And to reiterate what my colleague Amit Chatterjee spoke, he spoke about the importance of having a vision and cascading it across the organization through a team of crazy change agents, crazy on a lighter note. But the point is, if the answer to that is yes, so then are you ready to reboot? And so as a first step to reboot, my recommendation to organizations is to translate that vision into high velocity action by developing scenario-based growth plans and forecasts for the medium and long term. So that's my first recommendation. Now, that's all fine to say, but given the present circumstances, my second recommendation to organizations would be to not only plan for continuity of operations that Amit spoke about, but also to embed bolder inorganic growth strategies or initiatives into those plans. And in fact, when planned and implemented well, those inorganic growth strategies offer a faster way to penetrate markets or acquire customers or enhance value proposition, achieve operational scale, and may even develop financial strength. So what is this inorganic strategy? I mean, inorganic strategy is something that an organization does to stay competitive in the market. So inorganic strategies are a type of strategy which actually can accelerate that process of staying competitive in this market, and they usually focus around development of strategic partnerships. So typically they can range from formal collaborations and joint ventures to consolidation of through amalgamations and mergers and acquisitions. So let me talk about a few ways in which you can actually do this within your own organizations. So there are 4 steps that I would just like to go through. A, it's very critical that you set up a core team to assess strengths and weaknesses of your organization in the current situation, and narrow down on areas where existing growth strategies have not, or your current growth strategies are not yielding desired results. So that is the first step. B, the core team can then map the prioritized growth opportunities to the type of business partnership, and that would actually be based on the feasibility of of the type of partnership that you're looking at. So when you're looking at mapping growth opportunities to the type of partnership, feasibility needs to be looked into from strategic, operational, and financial perspectives. Okay, does it give you enough competitive advantage in the market? What is the impact on your operation, on your current operations? Financially, what does it mean for you in terms of funding those initiatives? C, the team can then identify and reach out to a short list of potential partners to explore partnership opportunities, and that based on discussions and negotiations ultimately a suitable transaction can be structured and completed. And the last step, which is D, is once the structure or the nature of relationship is finalized, it needs to be then operationalized within the organization by what we call a partner integration process. And the reason for this is for doing this is that it ultimately helps you realize the full benefits of a strategic partnership over a period of time. And of course, all this is fine, but you know, are there any examples? I mean, are we seeing any signs of this in the recent past? I mean, we are seeing a lot of inorganic activity recently. So let's talk about you know, ventilator manufacturing, especially for hospitals. And you all know there is a lot of shortage around that. So you have companies like Maruti Suzuki and Mahindra who have actually collaborated with smaller design firms to produce ventilators for hospitals. So this is actually based on their large capacities. They've been able to turn these out fairly quickly. Similarly, we have, you know, alcoholic beverage companies which are now tied up with you know, delivery people in the delivery space, you know, food delivery space, to actually supply, you know, liquor to homes, and thus they've in fact trying to target a whole new market through this. We have also seen evidence of cross-border mergers and acquisitions. A recent example was, you know, a cybersecurity company in Bhopal actually merged with an entity in Portugal so that they could, you know, target newer markets in Europe and US. I have actually worked with an investment banker associate recently to help a 100 crore semiconductor services company with 800 employees get acquired by one of the leading you know, technology services companies, Tech Mahindra. So definitely this is something that companies are looking at seriously. And in conclusion, I believe that organizations can take action now, develop scenario-based growth plans, and incorporate inorganic growth strategies in order to jumpstart growth. I will now leave it to my colleagues to elaborate more on some of the operationalization aspects of this, and I'm sure you'll find it useful. So thank you, Dr. Omprakash, and back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sudhir, for your insight on the jumpstart and diversification plan mergers. So that's one area where reboot can happen. Those who are really having a vision, a plan ahead. And for all these things, yeah, having said by Amit and Sudhir that, you know, all these things are academic and more of a planning state. But yeah, here comes the man whom we can really look at when it comes to vitamin M. So how could the finance, you know, the sustainable finance today, there is a scheme which the finance minister had mentioned that is only applicable for the existing borrowers. But then there are a lot of others who might, you know, face very big deal to get rise funds, and you don't find even investors around. So how do you kind of Amogh, how do you build a roadmap towards sustainable finance?
Thanks for the question, Dr. Omprakash, and a very interesting one at that. Again, thanks Prithvi for the introduction. I think what's very important is to drive the point that whatever I'm speaking about today isn't a band-aid solution, right? So a plaster won't help with an internal hemorrhage. We have to look beyond just the next couple of months, and just to talk about how you go ahead to build sustainable finance for your organization. I'd like to talk about 3 points here today. First one being compartmentalize, or in simple terms, segregate every spend. Sudhir did mention building out various scenarios, building out rolling forecasts. These become very crucial exercises in your organization, and you have the time to do it now. If you want to try anything in terms of an exercise, in terms of simulation, now is the time to do it. I'm sure you should have done it earlier, but it's never too late. To be able to put in simple terms, Dr. Om, so what I'm trying to tell here is determine what is the good to have, what is the great to have, and what are must-haves. The good to haves and the great to haves in the current scenario, they definitely can wait, and you can start planning your cash reserves for those spends in the future. But most Obviously, the must-haves are self-explanatory in terms of the immediate spend. So you have to be able to work your way around it. The second point I'd like to focus on is probably the most important for any business. This is irrespective of what the market situation is. That is, how do you create liquidity? How do you create liquidity for the future? There definitely are ways internally and externally you can achieve this. Looking at, let's say, for example, inventory, receivables, or how you structure sales incentives. It could be renegotiating your contracts both on the vendor and on the customer side. They also play a very crucial role in creating that breather space for you. There has to be a very holistic approach because all of these are very interdependent, and you can't take a decision on any one thing all alone. Freeing up cash in the system but not doing everything internally is also a great strategy. If you don't be an everything for everyone is something that I keep saying to my clients as well. It's easier to have one person managing an outsourced activity than a team for each task internally. This will also help you reduce capital expenditure in the future, right? There are also multiple lines of businesses in an organization. So try and carry out a line of business study. To give you a very small example, in our technology firm, we did this particular study and realized one of the divisions was actually bleeding money. The company never in the past managed to identify the problem, looking at what I'd call post-mortem numbers, right? But which was the overall organization. But they were still making money at an overall company level, but not left with enough for to reinvest in growth. What we implemented for them was by setting benchmarks for adding new clients, revisiting their current portfolio, reassigning certain resources, and planning for upskilling wherever there is a requirement. The end result, and this was implementation of 90 days, was that the selling cost was down by 20 lakhs a month. The gross profit had increased by 75 lakhs month on month, and most importantly, had freed up 5,000 hours of man hours for them, which could be utilized in better ways. Another quick example is a manufacturing firm. A small role that we played there was renegotiating the current terms of the borrowing from the banker. We researched what the prevailing rates were and identified what the advantage in the company was that they could use as leverage when they were renegotiating with the banker. What this did was gave them an interest cost saving of almost 15 lakhs per quarter. That's 60 lakhs in a year, that they don't have to look outside for additional capital. So in the current scenario, also another very important point is that everyone is open for negotiation or renegotiation for that matter. Take advantage of that, not just with your banks, but with your customers and with your vendors as well. Long-term plan, also there is an opportunity in terms of raising equity capital. A lot of manufacturing companies don't look at that as an option, right? So, but you have to understand that raising equity is a very time-consuming affair. It has to be looked at only for growth and not for survival. It takes time to clean up internal roadblocks. It takes time for you to profile investors, present collateral to them, negotiate and structuring. All of this are very mentally tasking activities, right? So ideally, what you do is probably hire an investment banker who can do the heavy lifting for you while you focus on the business. Just another point I'd like to touch upon in terms of creating liquidity is how you can look at M&A opportunities, mergers and acquisition opportunities. These are liquidity events for the company and also create a large win for the promoters. And the market, especially now, is ripe for consolidation. So I won't go into too many details because obviously this topic alone warrants another maybe 1 hour in terms of the session. And I'd not want to eat into the next panel member's time as well. The third point that I would like to focus on is creating internal champions for every cause. Amit and Sudhir mentioned that you have to identify crazy change agents. I mean, I'd like to call them internal champions who can actually steer every effort. It is time for you to identify those guys within the organization who can be responsible for planning, budgeting, calculating ROI on every initiative and implementation of those projects. Stop thinking of them as just merely project managers for a specific task, and they have to be encouraged to step up to take it up as if it's their own company. So just to summarize, Dr. Rom, my 3 points are: segregate your spend, take up initiatives to create liquidity, and create internal champions. I'd like to end by saying measure every action actually from a cost benefit perspective. This means that capturing a lot of relevant data, and which will help you be quick on your feet to make relevant decisions as well. Over to you, Dr. Rom.
That was a fantastic approach, Amogh ji, and I fully understand that liquidity is going to be a major challenge
I think Dr. Om, I'm not able to hear Dr. Om.
Dr. Omprakash, can you hear us? Yeah, lost your signal. Mr. Ramkumarr, you could take it forward.
Ram, we are not able to hear you.
Yes, thank you very much, Amogh. That was a very interesting thought that you shared with all of us. And so I'd like to bring in the next speaker, who's Mr. P.S. Rao. Mr. Rao, after hearing Amit, Sudhir, and Amogh right now, I just want to know, I mean, you know, on rebooting and then going forward, why is data-driven decision-making so very critical today and beyond? Mr. Rao?
Yeah. Thank you, Ram. That's probably one of the most pertinent questions in today's time. And I also like to thank Mr. Prithvi for the intro and BCIC for the opportunity. And thank you for everyone who's joined us this evening. So, as they say, there is a saying that says that during the worst of times, the best comes out of people, and this is true for organizations as well. And luckily, we are at times when we have the opportunity to leverage the spirit in our teams to bring in change. So, and many of us have been following this pandemic and then the news around the vaccine very closely. And today we are hearing about that there are about 20 vaccines from about 20 companies which are under various stages of drug development or trials. Now, though this is happening because of the urgency in the situation that we are in, just imagine what critical role the data availability, could it be with respect to the gene sequencing, publications or the production technologies or capabilities required, but all this available on a real-time basis. This data, this has played such a important role, and had this not information or data been available, or not been able to be monitored by appropriate healthcare agencies, these vaccines would not have seen the light of the day. But why are we talking about that today is more important. So the reason is the one factor that will differentiate businesses in the times to come is their agility or the speed with which they act or get things done. How agile a business is, how agile their decision making is, will primarily depend on three factors, and that's what I'll talk about today. And those three things three things to focus specifically are, data and analytics and analysis, process and metrics, and dashboards. And this is what Amogh was mentioning or pointing to when he closed his presentation. So let me start with data and analysis to begin with. During these times, of new social norms, whether it is employees and customers or management and employees, they're having to work from different locations. My colleague Randhir will go into that aspect. But CEOs and top managers are noticing the importance of having data and analysis available anywhere on any device so that they're able to make those right decisions at the right time. So this is in fact what I'm hearing from my customers also, and I'm advising them on the need for getting prepared for implementing robust, cost-effective systems that help them access real-time data and analysis, so they're in a position to make those effective decisions in a timely manner. Going forward, rebooting business will require change and new strategies to be implemented. And that also means that frontline managers will need to take more and more decisions without cutting through the layers of organizational approvals that exist. So for businesses which already have, which have these or do not have these platforms, this is the time to invest in systems to drive these effective decision-making systems. And and there are many organizations where there are systems already existing. There are legacy systems, but these systems never interact with each other. There's so much of information there. They're operating in silos. So even in mature organizations, there could be data sitting in systems, but what we need to ensure is whether this data is giving or providing the right insights to the frontline managers who need to take those decisions. So the ability of organizations to take those data-driven decisions at every level of the organizations will ensure whether organizations are behind the curve or not. And this is how they're going to build their resilience or muscle for tomorrow. Now, having said that, I know these systems come, at a cost of bomb, and IT budgets are severely stress. So, which is where I advise my clients to explore and I help them design and implement, cost-effective solutions where data can be leveraged by them. The second key thing that they need to focus on is process and metrics. Now, any change mandates that organizations revisit their processes. Now, whether it's related to key metrics or anything, in fact, I tell my clients that they need to evaluate each and every activity, each and every process, and look at, are there any redundancies? Are there any repetitive tasks that are actually adding waste to the system? They're actually adding waste to the entire operational chain. So developing metrics for each of these process steps is key, so that these things can be factored into the final analysis and effective decision making. So that leads us to saying that systems and dashboards are the next key things to focus on. So CEOs and executives today will need systems and dashboards which capture processes and metrics on a real-time basis. And these need to feed into these dashboards that are accessible across kind of any device or anywhere they are. So what CEOs need is real-time view of, let's say, the budgets and what the actual performance is, and even more important, what are the variances between these budgets and actuals. So that they can take those corrective actions at the right time. So and I've been again advising my clients on designing and implementing these real-time cloud-based systems that bring information to the CEOs rather than CEOs having to go to teams to get this information to make those decisions. So it's about time criticality. So that's what we work on. And like my colleague Amit talked about, the continue to and change the two legs and why we can't have both of them up in the air. To summarize, I'd like to say that to stand firm on business continuity, the three key things would be to have robust processes, to have key matrices and data and dashboards in place, and this will be the foundation. This will be the pedestal on which change and new strategies can be built in the future. And if the new strategies are involves M&A, like my other colleague Sudhir brought out, it is in fact very, very essential that you take care that you have the processes and key metrics on both sides of the integration, and these can be integrated properly so that the dashboards can be seamlessly built and ensure that a seamless execution of the M&A strategy. Thank you, Dr. Omprakash, and thanks Ram for the question. I'll hand it over to Dr. Omprakash if he's back.
Dr. Omprakash, are you there? Dr. Omprakash, can you hear us, please? Dr. Omprakash? Dr. Omprakash, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Right.
Thanks, Rao. And now, whenever we check with various senior level executives and employees, most of them are at home. That's what is the trend. The workplace has changed with lockdowns happening here and there, and the dreadful disease around. People have to plan their work resource and also save these very important skill sets. So, Randhir ji, this is a question for you. Today's workforce and workplace is shifted to the digital workplace. So now, how do we acquire more knowledge or harness knowledge to the digital workplace? Over to you, Randhir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Om. So, interestingly, what PSR or what Amogh or Sudhir or what Amit were talking about is the need to build a more agile organization, which is kind of more flexible. kind of response faster in a very planned manner, and that is what is coming out. So one aspect that is clearly coming out is that all the actions that has to be taken very fast, and this involves individuals, okay, and these individuals can be employees or the vendors in your supply chain or even the clients. Now, interestingly, with pandemic, all of them are working virtually. So the question that comes to anyone easily is, how do I manage remote teams? How can I manage my supply chain remotely? Or how do we interact with the clients? Because everyone is virtual now. So being able to interact physically is difficult. In short, I mean, being able to interact virtually is difficult in short term, but we can see in the long term from whatever we could read, it is becoming very clear that working virtual is going to stay here. So the way of working is kind of going to be there in the long run. So the question is, how are we going to enable remote working and remote interactions? If you take the case of employees of an organization, they are going to through a very big disruption, a huge disruption. The way they've been working in a couple of weeks time frame, it's completely shifted from office to home. In the case of IT companies, more than 90% of the work has been shifted home. Manufacturing companies, almost 30%, they're running with 30% of their staff, right? So basically most of the work has been shifted home. Now the question is, have we provided them with the right support system to do their work? And typically when this question is asked, the answer that is given is yes, we have given them. But we always think of digital workplaces that we have created for the employees and feel that the work is done if we think that. However, that is not enough. The question that we have provided them the support system to do their work from home is not yes. Okay, what I'm trying to say here is, an employee who works in complicated area spends roughly around 30% of their time looking for information knowledge. Complex or complicated area, they spend 30% of time. The question is whether these systems allow employees easy access to information and knowledge to do their work. And interestingly, in many cases, the answer is no. Okay. While we have the technology is only 20% of the solution. So if I've set up a digital workplace or I've enabled all the infrastructure support, it is only 20% of the answer. This infrastructure should enable me to access organizational repository. They should be able to help me find information and knowledge. They should be able to help me access, get connected with my fellow team members to identify the right information knowledge. If I am not able to find that, it will impact my productivity, build frustration, and overall organization goals. So see what was happening during the pre-COVID time when we were working from our offices. This was not a challenge. There was no challenge with respect to finding information knowledge that easily. We could easily walk up to our friends and ask for information and all that, and we can get whatever we are looking for. But when the work got moved to virtual spaces, these connections got cut off. Okay, it even became difficult to search in the existing file servers as their structure if you're not structured properly. So the and if you can see, the challenges become much more higher in the case of non-IT companies. For example, manufacturing companies, they still use their emails to store and share information. Sometime before the COVID time, I was talking in one of these large manufacturing company in Pina, and they were talking about having all their information knowledge in file servers properly available. But the challenge for them was to find the information knowledge. So even though they digitized it, it was difficult for them to look into what is available. So that is the one key challenge that CEOs will be facing. How do we ensure our employees are able to find information? And mind you, we are talking about industry 4.0, society 5.0 and all that. This is a situation wherein we are finding this kind of challenge. So in companies where critical information knowledge is digitized and in many cases the findability is low, it has a direct impact on the overall performance of organization. So the question is, how do we create an ecosystem that provides easy access to information and knowledge and facilitates easily knowledge transfer and all that? So what I am kind of driving towards is, it is not only that you're forming your digital workplace and all that, but it is also important that it makes it easy for employees to find the right information knowledge through these digital workplaces. Thank you, Omji.
Yeah, this digital workplace has really been productive, and I've seen a lot of companies have increased their production. And for a women workforce, this has been very handy. And I think this is the way forward. I think the best gift which pandemic COVID has left us to is this digital workplace. Thank you, Dr. Randhir. And now I have the last question. Why is building a culture of empowerment important in 2021? And Ramkumarr Seshu, Born to Win. You know, the name itself is Born to Win. So I think you should empower us, empower the entrepreneurs in this 2021 and way forward 21-22. Over to you, Ram.
Thank you very much, Om. Truly appreciate the opportunity and the question that you're giving us. And I really like the fact that today we're discussing this particular issue. I completely agree with you. One of the things that I've been telling a lot of entrepreneurs, clients of mine, is that maybe it's just time to say, let's forget 2021, and then start focusing on 21-22, because things are down, things are very bad at this point of time. But the most important resource and the most important learnings that we are getting from this entire pandemic at this point of time is this: that if you see what we really need to do is that we need to now move away from the VUCA of the old to a new VUCA, which is a VUCA which has vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. And it becomes extremely important in this scenario for the CEO of the company to develop what I call a win-win leadership thinking. And therefore, we need to create today what we call a culture of empowerment. That is something which is most important at this point of time. So what are a couple of things that are important going forward? Number one, we need to collaborate. Today, the most important thing for any organization to survive and to grow is the ability to collaborate. And you can only do that if the entire team that you have is feeling included. You must make sure that people are going to feel included. There is a culture of inclusion, which means that every single person in that team must feel that he or she is part of the entire decision making, is part of whatever is happening within that particular organization. The second, I believe that the second thing that we need to do is to develop a tremendous amount of implementation excellence, because today we have got to get used to the fact that we don't have the same kind of workforce. We're all talking of 30%, 40% kind of workforce at the workplace. And therefore, implementation is going to become the most important thing going forward. And for that, we need to create a culture of confidence in our people. Whatever is the strategy that the enterprise is adopting right now, but the CEO, the MD needs to create a certain confidence in the people who are working in that organization, to give them the feeling that yes, they can go and implement, and they can implement and they'll do a very, very good job at that. The third particular thing that we need to create is a culture of results. You see, this pandemic is not an excuse for us not to produce the kind of results that we need to produce. And therefore, we need to get into this entire culture that, look, today more than at any point of time, every single action that we take must have an outcome. And today is the time for us to create that particular culture of results. The next thing that we need to do is to create a culture of learning. Today is not the time for organizations not to invest in learning. We need to upskill, we need to change. Look at the kind of digital embracing that has happened thanks to this particular pandemic that has happened. We've got to embrace technology. We are now embracing the low-hanging fruits like GoToMeeting or a Zoom or whatever it is. But we need to start upskilling, because customers are not going to be there for us. Vendors are not going to be there at easy access. Employees are not going to be there. So we need to start learning how can we upskill, how can we do things in a different way. The next thing that we need to do, I believe, is to manage change. Don't be worried about change. You must embrace uncertainty. Uncertainty is not wrong. We need to get used to the fact that all the plans that we've made are going to get tossed by the window, and we need to figure out ways now of figuring out how can we manage uncertainty. And finally, Om, today we need to start celebrating small successes. Those big successes to organizations are not going to happen. It's the small ones, it's the tiny successes that we need to figure out. So Om, here is what I'm suggesting to all of us. We need to create a culture of empowerment. Take the most important resource that you've got, which is the human resources. This is the time that you've got to be with them. This is the time to make them feel included. This is the time for them to be in a learning mode. This is the time for them to feel in a system by which they can take your company and move it forward. 2021 will happen sooner than later. We've had a terrible, terrible 6 months. And then coming on top of the fact that we've been having a bit of a slowdown, call it a recession, call it whatever you want. So this has happened at a very interesting time of our life. It's time to reboot. Can we do it? 100% we can. And I think today we've heard some very interesting thoughts from Amit, from Sudhir, from Amogh, from Randhir, and from Rao, each giving us a different manifestation of how we can actually reboot our business going forward. We should, we can. Om, back to you. Thank you so much.
That was wonderful, Ram, and yes, what you said was 100% correct. No looking back. Just accept what is happening around you, build, empower yourself, and the saying that you mentioned, make your employees feel included. Yeah, that's a very good, powerful sentence you have made. This is the time we need to be around them, and instead of trying to downsize, we should see what we can bring more. Okay, so this is very important. A dead end, it is not a dead end. I think we will definitely get some diversions here and there. Look at various opportunities around, and as Ram, definitely small successes do matter a lot than targeting a huge success. And this is going to not happen at all in the near future, at least. Yes, success do come. We need to really plan for the bigger ones, but small ones, please celebrate. Yes, well said, Ram. I think I really appreciate that word. I'm also an entrepreneur, and I know I'm the service sector. We are really having the digital workplace, and we are just surviving and trying to see what best we can do. In fact, we have recruited some few people also. So planning ahead and making people happier and having a vision, like how Amit was mentioning about the CEO's role. So his position is really going to be a task. And way forward, how is he going to perform? The management is depending on him. And of course, strategy plannings are there. Your jumps are, growth is also there. With a clear roadmap of the finance, sustainable finance. Today, there is a question which has come. Somebody is talking. Please, can you unmute? Yeah. Somebody's question in the chat box is the banks are flooded with funds, and how are they going to help the MSME, and how is BCIC going to take this up? Yes, this is a challenge. BCIC is a body of representatives of various entrepreneurs and companies and corporates. We are making representation to the task force, which is being formed by the Karnataka government. There is a review meeting happening. Bankers are called. The representatives from various associations, organizations have been called. So we are discussing on that. We have made representations for the MSME sectors, those who are not borrowers, to also be funded. And banks are also very judicious. They are trying to leverage on the existing security. So they are not willing to give new loans, fresh loans, in this situation. So it's a checkmate to both of us. So that is why this rebooting has come up. So you should think beyond the banks. Avenues where we can really find out methods to get this funding or financing. So small business diversification is a need of ours, and definitely the companies which are having bigger plans have to wait for another 6 months to go and need to go to the bank with their modified or revised projections and realistic projections, so that the bank also feels comfortable, the shareholders also, the investors also feel comfortable, and this time the accounting is also going to be a big challenge. The audits, everything is going to face a lot of disruption. So, the compliance is also going to be an issue, and there is a request from our chairman, Ram, it is for you. Reiterate the new VUCA definition mentioned earlier. Ram, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, what was the question, Om? I couldn't follow that.
Yeah, it is in the chat box. Please reiterate the VUCA definition mentioned earlier.
VUCA. What is VUCA?
Okay, all right.
VUCA.
So, traditionally, we've been told that we are in a VUCA kind of a world right now. VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity.
Ambiguity.
And there is no doubt about the fact that we are in a VUCA world at this point of time. We're extremely volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. But if you were to create a culture of empowerment within the organization, then you can substitute volatility with vision, which is what Amit and everybody was talking about. We can get a tremendous amount of understanding, which is what Sudhir, Amogh were all talking about. And we can get a lot of clarity, which is C. From complexity, we can move to clarity, which is what Randhir and Mr. Rao were sharing in terms of how can you harness technology and get that done. And finally, A, which is ambiguity, can become, we can convert it into agility if we follow what we talked about. So the new definition of VUCA for 2021, according to me, is vision, understanding, clarity, agility. So this is the new VUCA. I think this is what the six of us, Om, were trying to share our thoughts on what we've been doing, even during this time of helping to create a new paradigm within industry. Om, back to you, Om.
Yeah, participants, the floor is open for any question answers. So we don't want to, be this session to be one-sided. We would like the participants to shoot questions. The panel is available for you. So any questions on the reboot or any other, related queries, please open up. Yeah, Amit has put in the chat box vision, understanding, clarity, agility, the new normal VUCA. Thanks, Amit. Yeah, there's a question coming from Subramaniam Rajamani. Subramaniam, you can shoot a question.
Yeah, I will write it down.
This is to Ramkumarr. How do you think digital learning can help in this time?
Mr. Subramaniam, let me attempt to answer it, but then let me also bring in my two colleagues who are far more qualified to answer this question, Randhir and Mr. Rao. But let me just tell you one thing, sir, that in the digital learning space, what we're finding right now is that the ability for people to upskill is tremendous. And there are lots and lots of opportunities that are available for all of us to change. Just to give you an idea, sir, I used to resist this online kind of work earlier. I believe that it is always better to have a face-to-face interaction with my customers and my clients. But now in the last 3 months, we've been forced, we've had no option but to shift. And it's working extremely well. So we've completely, gone digital as a platform, and it's working very, very well. But I'd like to bring in the two experts. Randhir, would you and Mr. Rao like to throw some light with us, Randhir? Go ahead, Randhir,
Yeah.
please unmute. Yeah, go ahead, Randhir.
Thanks, Ram. So I would not call it as digital learning, though all the learning is happening currently during this time. I would say learning is becoming very, very important these days. Okay, so if you look into the current situation, like what Amit was also talking about, the situation is like we have to take decisions faster, right? Earlier we had a time period of taking decisions for a year, but it is not like that. It is short-term decisions, 3 months decisions, and you may have to take forward and or go back to on that decision. So you have to keep on learning. The point that you are talking about of VUCA, clarity. How do I bring clarity? Clarity comes with learning, with trying to understand what is the situation. So that learning is becoming important. And fortunately, thanks to COVID, I'm saying that now you are able to learn quite a lot. Every day a lot of sessions are happening. You've got a lot of content available. As a matter of fact, if you go to Coursera and all these things, courses are available at 10% of earlier cost. Learning is easy now, and this is the time when you should be learning because you have to bring clarity. Okay, so digital learning is something that you should be adopting a lot. Not only you, for your organizational members also. The best part is it's cheaper now, so you should go for that.
Mr. Rao, anything?
Yeah, I think when we say learning, training, anything, I think I'll use an example here to best suit this. The Summer Olympics of 2020 got shifted out to 2021. Now think about all the athletes who've been training all these last 4 years for that July 2020 thing to happen. Now just what is happening? Have they stopped training? So they're not. They're still doing the same kind of regimen to maintain their fitness, their resilience to target for 2021. They are using the digital space now, the digital tools, the technology, the data to train with their coaches whom they can't meet face to face. So I think every opportunity, every situation is throwing an opportunity, and I think it's just a question of using these tools to build our resilience for tomorrow, our muscle for tomorrow. This is what is going to keep us ahead of the competition in the coming times.
Well, there is another question from Raghavan. I don't know who is going to take up this question. How post-COVID order should uphold equality, secularism, and democratic principles? This question seems to be very, very serious.
Sir, let me attempt to get into it, and then maybe I'll quickly pass on the blame game to Mr. Amit Chatterjee, who will help me out. Let me tell you, Raghavan, I think this is a very interesting question that you asked. Forget at a polity level, but I think even if we come down to the level of a business, come down to the level of an enterprise, how can some of these principles of what you're talking about be applicable? I think what is also going to happen, Raghavan, is that today the old barriers of knowledge and gatekeepers of knowledge is going to slowly but surely come down. So what is going to happen is that there are too many opportunities that are available at this point of time, Raghavan. I think because of the tremendous opportunities that are available today, you're going to see an upsurge in in young people talking more and more about good values, which is what you're talking about: equality, secularism, democracy, etc. And I think it is these values that are going to get a tremendous reinforcement even in the corporate world. Amit, any thought on that, Amit, on the importance of values going forward?
Yeah, I think you said it, Ram. The point is that, first of all, thanks, Mr. Raghavan, for a wonderful question. We all know what are the good values, but we find the world is not always practicing it. And the reason the blame has to always be taken by the guys at the top. So again, taking on from Ram what he said, if you come to the organization and domain, it is the CEO and the top management who has to allow for the values like equality, secularism, and democratism. Now, why the post-COVID order will enhance that is because I think all CEOs today are a bit nonplussed, are a bit confused, because what has happened in the last 6-9 months is something no CEO was trained for, whether from childhood or in the business school or in engineering or as their entrepreneur in the entrepreneurial life. So if I put myself into the shoes of a CEO, for example, I find it very easy now to say, I don't know. And therefore, I can go and walk to those people in the company, whether it's a 50-man company or a 500-man company, that, can you tell me, can you help me? One of the most powerful aspects of leadership, at least life has taught me, is that you express your vulnerability. You go to another person, be it young, she, he, doesn't matter, and say, look, can you help me? I have this vision, like I painted a picture, okay, and every CEO has to paint a picture to his or her organization. And then you say, look, can you help me? And the moment you say you help me, it doesn't make you weaker. It actually makes you stronger, because 50 people will come across and try to help you, okay? And this is the way that I think the values like equality, secularism, and democracy will definitely get upheld, at least starting with the major unit that we live with as a society, which is the industry society. And I think all of us in the industry can really help in furthering these values.
Thank you, Amit. Just to add to that, Om, through you to everybody else. We keep telling people a simple point: asking for help is a sign of strength. Asking for help is a sign of strength. If somebody actually seeks out help, it is a sign of strength. And like Amit put it so very correctly, I think if the CEO can be encouraged to start seeking genuine help, I think there's a lot that he or she can achieve going forward in this new normal. Om, back to you, sir. I think another question.
Yeah, there is a question by Vivek Prabhu, Mr. Vivek Prabhu. It is to Amogh Giridhar. Is it advisable to postpone expansion plan, that too in capex at this point of time?
Right. So Vivek, I mean, it's not really a catch-22 question. The way you've thought about it, it's not really a catch-22 situation. Think about it this way: is the expansion going to give you an upper hand at the end of this COVID era, or is expansion, if you don't do it, is it going to wipe you off the face of the earth and let your competition take over? If it's a matter of your survival and the expansion has to happen, then the investment obviously has to happen. What you need to undertake is also, beyond just thinking about this, is a cost-benefit analysis. What is this cost going to benefit in terms of, if you look at a pre-COVID era, you're talking about assigning a certain multiple to what you've done. The multiple has to be a little bit higher in the post-COVID era. This is what I feel.
Okay.
Can I add to that? Yeah. So I think it's a fantastic question Mr. Prabhu has asked, and he has used the word opportunity. He's used the word uncertainty. And uncertainty is always, and that uncertainty is what we need to use to come out with scenarios. Okay, and then so expansion can happen depending on the scenario that we plan for. And again, where you talk about capex, I mean, that is exactly where you need to also think of new ways of expanding, and including the inorganic or collaborations, or even mergers and acquisitions, or JVs, where you may not have capex, right? You may not have the infrastructure right now, but you can probably use someone else's unutilized capacity to target a particular opportunity. So it is about building scenarios, and to again, to what Amogh added, it is also about making sure that you're utilizing maybe someone else's capacity to target opportunities. So
okay, this is the questionnaire to all the panelists. What what could be the one-liner mantra for the reboot? I would like each one of the panelists to sum up, give a one-liner or a bullet to the entrepreneurs to reboot their business. Yes, Amit ji?
That's the most difficult question. But, let me give it a try, whether it's one line or two lines. I think, my tagline, if anybody cares to see my website, is growth is the function of your investment in uncertainty or complexity. Now, whatever is complex for me, if I make some investments over there, then only I can develop a competitive advantage. Means I can have some advantage vis-a-vis my competition. I take the lead from the CapEx question. You should do a CapEx because it will give you advantage. Otherwise, why should you do it for nobody does CapEx for fashion. Okay, if it helps me get market shares, it helps me improve my profitability, if it helps me, to enter into new markets, then I should do it. The uncertainty is an opportunity, for example. But of course, like Amogh and Sudhir said, you need to do your computations, calculations, everything. Sorry, that's the biggest one line I answered till now. Thank you.
Yeah, so my take is that we are talking about reboot here, and once again, what does reboot mean to you as an organization? I mean, it should be something along the lines of starting something or doing something again which is different. And once again, just like to reiterate that we preparing for uncertainty based on what is in your control, and also trying out new growth strategies will certainly help get back to growth mode.
Okay, Amogh ji, vitamin M.
So this is something that I always said, and this is a line that I use very often, is quantify every action. A number will help you determine what is workable, what isn't. One's a one to you and a one to me, and that will help me determine what works and what doesn't.
Thanks. Rao, informed decision.
Yeah. So I think in times like these, what CEOs are facing is a lot of stress when it comes to decision making. And if we for a moment look at some of the, I know I'm not using the right word, the Chinese companies, what they've demonstrated in times is that, businesses which have leveraged the digital platforms, they've done two primary things. Either they've used digital platforms or they've leveraged people in the digital space who are giants and their businesses, or they've gone strong for building a strong foundation of automation. So these are the two things. And I would, coming from automation background, I would think to look at right now is how you can automate the way you are working.
Dr. Randhir?
Yeah, so I would focus on how do we ensure employees have got the right information knowledge, how easy it is for them to access information knowledge. So if you see the discussions that were happening, we are all focusing on making it agile, going faster and all that, and all these things will happen through the employees. And for them to share their information, coordinate their work, it is important that we give them the proper support system. So when we are planning all these things, we should also ensure that this information knowledge gets transferred pretty fast so that we actually achieve what we are going for.
Ram Seshu?
Yeah, so one-liner is, I think CEOs have to be bold right now. They must invest in their most important, the three constituents of any business. They must now start investing a lot more time with them, their employees, their customers, and their vendors and suppliers. I think it's very important to invest in all this. And when you're investing here, you must adopt a win-win thinking process. The old win-lose is pre-COVID. Post-COVID is all about win-win. And like Sudhir mentioned to Vivek, if there is an opportunity for you to collaborate with someone, and create, use his or her underutilized capacity, I think that's great. So that's a great example of win-win leadership at work. So the one-liner home, adopt a win-win kind of a thinking with your employees, with your customers, and with your vendors and suppliers in that order.
That's a good one, Ram. Raghavan has again come back with a very hypothetical question. What will happen to China in the long run? If we all reboot, I think China is going to be nowhere.
Nothing will happen to China. You must understand that it took China many, many years to reach where it has reached right now. And China, if you look at the India-China trade, in the context of Chinese trade worldwide, India-China is just a minuscule percent China's overall trade. So I don't think anything will happen to China because of India. I think we need not worry about China. I think we should worry about how we can make India more strong. How do we make our enterprises strong? How do we scale our enterprises? How do we make our enterprises more sustainable? I think that, Raghavan, is something that I'd really worry about. I'm not really concerned about.
Ram, I think we should begin and keep China as our gospel and try to rebuild our whole system and try to come out of the dependency level is what he was trying to mean. The Make India, all these things, the policies around us. We should really start thinking, if at all there's going to be another pandemic like this, we need to be strong enough to, say, hey, this is not new to us. We know how to manage ourselves. So that kind of, investment should happen in our system. So that is what is the need, I believe.
Absolutely.
Om, can I just add? Can I just add to what
let me
Ram
share
has
another thought with you, Om. If you look, I'm a student of Indian economic history. I mean, over the not now, but over if you look at it for the last 1,200 years. The fact is that this country was under siege so very many different times. Even before Alexander and then going on down the line. But look at the interesting thing about India. Okay. India is a story of resilience. It has continuously kept bouncing back. Every time this country was plundered in the next 20, 30 years, it bounced back. That means Indian enterprise was doing extremely well. Otherwise, why would somebody who wanted to plunder wealth come back to this country? The very fact that whether the Mughals or the British stayed here for so many years means that our enterprise continued to flourish and to thrive and for them to make money. Now, there is a learning for all of us in this one. The entire Indian enterprise movement was based on a concept called Antarprerana, which is the prerana from inside. The motivation from inside to run our enterprises profitably on a scale, on a sustainable basis. And therefore, Om, I think it's time for us to get back to those principles and those values. Because we are a very resilient economy. And I'm very, very confident that we're going to bounce back even from this in 2021. We just have to say that, okay, this is a blip, one more in a long line of blips in life, but this is not life. And we need to start thinking of what are we going to do in 2021, 2022, 2025, and go on. And don't also forget another thing, Om. Whether we like it or we don't like it, India is going to become a $5 trillion economy. The question is whether it is 24 or 25 or 26 or 27. That's the only debate right now. But we will. Because 140 crore people are going to demand that. So that's the kind of opportunity that each one of us is sitting here and looking at. So Yes, 2021 is a reality, but so is the fact that there is a tremendous opportunity waiting for us in the future. And that's what makes me extremely bullish about Indian enterprise and about the economy. Sorry, Amit, you were saying something.
Yeah, Amit, you would add something?
Yes, the word that comes to my mind, of course, from the question that Mr. Raghavan spoke about, what will happen to China? I mean, of course, we are all interested in what will happen to India, which is our country. And I think any of us who has traveled outside the country with the blue passport, that is when we realize that we are Indians and we are not the Bengalis and the Tamils and the Kannadigas, etc., etc., etc. I think what has to be in our minds that we have to have this pride that if I'm running a company, my company should be able to export and compete against whoever, even the bloody Germans. I worked with the Germans 25 years. And that's the second country, probably next to my own country, that I've visited the most and understand or try to understand. The pride in producing something which is better than others, the pride in producing something which is, sustainable in branding, in quality, for example. But look at this guy, they always say made in Germany. Okay. Why made in India is not looked at positively. I think the shift that has to happen is we have to shift from depending on only skills to depending on also knowledge. And when we are talking about knowledge, then it is not about training. We are talking about knowledgeable people. So we need to hire knowledgeable people. As my old boss used to tell me, and I think all old bosses said the same, you got to hire people in your companies which are better than you in knowledge primarily, and let them create something different, something new, something which creates new markets for you, new products for you. We cannot depend on this old skill thing only, for example, and government bailouts. That does not work. We need to be more proud.
Okay, we are coming to the close. As Ram was mentioning, investing in employees, vendors, and customers. That's the mantra, I believe, going forward. And what a word, Antarprerana. Yeah. So let's reboot our business is the take today. And it was wonderful thought and discussion by all the panelists here. I really sincerely thank Amit ji, Sudhir, Amogh, Rao, Dr. Randhir, and Ramkumarr Seshu for spending time with us, sharing their wonderful experiences which they have gathered over the past few years in different roles, and the entire experience has been culminated into 1.5 hour power-packed session here. And I hope all the participants would have definitely benefited at least one point to take away. And please share. And if it need be, please let us know. We will come up with a detailed session for all these panelists. I know they are all constrained. I have given them only slots. Each of them can talk at least a couple of hours. Ram Seshu can talk at least one day on these topics. So we will get back again on these topics. Please let us know if there is a feedback required, and we will also be sending a mail to every participants here for their valuable suggestion, and poll also will be coming to you in your inbox. Please respond to that. And can I see the chairman Ganesh around here? Mr. Ganesh?
Yes, Om.
Good evening, Ganesh ji.
Good evening.
You can't hide like this.
No, I'm not hiding. I think it was a good session. I think I'm listening to the gyans of all people. I think very knowledgeable people who have shared their experience. It was nice to see how we can reboot ourselves.
Ganesh, I think you should close the vote of thanks, thanking the panelists and the participants here. I give the privilege to you.
I would like to thank all the panelists who have participated here and given their time to BCIC. It was a wonderful session of reboot the business. I think the new VUCA is already eating me in a different form. I think probably I will take it in a phase to see how the reality is all about in the coming years. And also for all the people who are given inputs relating to either finance, digital platform, or how to do the continuity of business in a manner, how a CEO to reboot himself. I think it's given a great inputs to all people who have participated. I believe it is going to be a great input, and we would look forward for creating more sessions individually, as Om said, to see whether we can take it up in an individual form also. I'd like to thank all the participants, all the panelists, Om for moderating, and also BCIC, Prithvi and Rupa, Sham Prasad for making this making this meeting possible. Thanks.
One last question there by Anchal. You spoke about upskilling. What have you identified as the key emotional intelligence traits during this time and post-COVID? I think this should, Dr. Randhir should be able to answer.
Okay, it's
Om, there's one
emotionally.
more question for Amogh. Amogh, request you to share your 4 points that you summarized.
Yeah, let's re-emphasize your 4 points.
Okay, mine was only 3 points, by the way. So it's about right. So I gave out a bonus, I guess. So you have to. First one is obviously segregate how you spend. The second is initiatives that you can take internally to create liquidity, and third one is on creating internal champions.
So,
Om, I answered Anchal, not to worry, but Randhir, anything on Anchal? What do you want to
yes,
do?
see, emotional intelligence part, I would, so we did a study, okay, during this COVID time on how working from home is impacting. And one aspect that was coming out was majorly is that social isolation. If you are not well connected, you will get, there is a possibility of social isolation impacting on your frustration and all that. Okay, so I mean, I don't know, call it as emotional intelligence, but this is one aspect that managers should be aware of. Where, see, you have two kinds of employees who are very proactive, going forward and all that, talking to people. They have been cut off. Okay, so they kind of get impacted because you're completely socially isolated. You are not able to talk to anyone at all. How are you going to manage their requirements? The information, knowledge, how do you ensure that they are well connected? So these are some things that has to be looked into. How do you ensure people are connected with each other, socialize? That aspect of emotional intelligence, that we should look into it. That will be interesting.
Sir, Mr. Chandramoli, sir, are you there? Mr. A.N. Chandramoli? I think he's not there.
ANC is a legend.
Yes, sir. Tell me, sir.
Sir, you, sir.
No, ANC is a legend. I love hearing ANC. Sir, how are you?
I'm okay, sir. But with such erudite panel and the thing on a subject which I'm not familiar, I'm still learning such subjects, you know. And in between, my wife called me for the coffee and snacks, so I went down and came. So luckily, you know, when you look out for my name, I'm luckily back here. So looking out of home has the luxury of having the home coffee. But if you have any specific question, I will try to think about. Anything, sir? You ask me specific question.
Okay, I think that comes to, you know, we come to an end, and I think Mr. So any other questions? The panelists are available here.
So Anchal has asked that question again. So why I ask is, we are moving towards agility. So if we can identify the key EQ, emotional quotient traits, we can build agility and trust overall.
Oh, okay. The subject is about agility. There is a very interesting course. If I can take that question, sorry, if I'm interrupting somebody, sorry.
Please, love to hear you.
agile mindset. Agile mindset is a flexibility and dynamism combined to handle the volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, and complex world. What we call the VUCA world is the jargon now. Is nothing but somebody who's able to constantly adapt himself, learn new things. Like, we are working out of home, we are learning now. Zoom, I learned, and so many things. And we have a fantastic guy in our Bangalore chamber called Mr. Dinakaran. And he is doing a fantastic training called Do How on agile mindset. And it's seeing is believing the way he conducts his webinars. Every evening he is engaging with the public with 1 hour, and mostly it is free, and some are chargeable. And he has now put together a course because I asked him to put together a course for National Skill Development Corporation. Like somebody mentioned today, that knowledge is more critical than skill. I completely agree with him. Therefore, I use the word competence. Competence being the combination of knowledge and skill. In fact, I prefer this morning I had 2 study sessions, one with Tata and another Toyota. De-skilling is the order of the day rather than skilling. So they were surprised. What de-skilling? So I said in the automation era, it is better not to meddle with the machine. So sometimes you de-skill, reskill, upskill, and multi-skill. Each word has a meaning behind it. And all this means knowledge plus skill. The days are gone when you're talking only hands-on. Vocational training, all the PMKVI, even government is grappling with the mistake. Now coming back to the Do How program of Dinakar, which talks about the agile mindset, and around 20 traits which are called the soft skill traits are being covered by him. Maybe he's listening to us today in our 31 people. And he must have, I'll ask him to do a webinar for BCIC in the month of August, and that will be good. And then National Skill Development Corporation is actively considering how to bring this into the so-called soft skill domain, cognitive skills, problem-solving skills, complex decision-making skills, and social skills to deal with others, and so on and so forth, are becoming more important, not only due to Corona, but in the new digital era. Sorry if I spoken too much, sorry.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for taking up a question. Thank you very much. And thanks for your feedback also. So I think we will end the session, and we will definitely come back to you again in a new avatar, in a new topic. So thanks for being with us. Thank you all.
Thanks, Dr. Rom.
Thank you, Dr. Rom. Thank you very much for your
Thank you all.